for all things Halloween. This is Haunt-Former, and welcome to my 2018 review of Halloween. Directed by David Gordon Green and written most notably by Danny McBride. This film was also produced by Jamie Lee Curtis and John Carpenter, and was composed by John and Cody Carpenter, John Carpenter's son. So, Halloween 2018 tells the story of Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis's character back from the 1978 classic horror film. It deals with her trauma these years later, still dealing with Michael Myers and the fact that he may very well come home again. Going into this movie, I was very excited and also very nervous. The original Halloween is among my favorite horror films ever made. It's one of the best horror films ever made for its atmosphere, its creepiness, its music, and of course, Michael Myers being a sinister and terrifying horror villain. At the same time, I was worried that this modern interpretation may dip too much into modern horror tropes, so I was a little bit scared going in, also considering that this was made by Blumhouse, and Blumhouse movies are sometimes really good or really bad, so I was in a bit of a toss-up. Going through this movie and now having had watched the film, and I'm not still completely sure of my thoughts, I would have to say that this movie is okay. Alright? I was really stoked for this movie, and I want to get all my thoughts to you guys. Don't worry, I'm not going to give anything away in this section of the review, so you can be rest assured, no spoilers as of now. But there will be a spoiler talk coming soon, and you will be warned, so don't worry. So let's talk about this film. So, let's start with everything that I loved about this film. First of all, right off the gate, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, fantastic. Her performance was really good. It really sold her victimizing state that she was in, the fact that she has lived for 40 years with the torment of Michael Myers. The actor who played Michael Myers also did a pretty creepy job, and one of my favorite parts of this film was the fact that it made Michael Myers scary again, even to modern audiences. A lot of people now kind of laugh at the original, and I think they missed the point. Michael Myers isn't meant to be a brute murderer. He is a very creepy stalker killer. So they kind of, I'll get to that in a second, but they did make him scary, which I liked. A lot of the sequels kind of made him more stupid than scary, so I'm glad this one took him seriously. I also love the fact that it kind of broke some modern horror tropes. It didn't have too many jump scares, which was really nice, and it relied on, Michael Myers being somewhere around, but you couldn't quite see where he was. I thought that was a really interesting take on the character. And there were a few weird twists throughout this movie. I'm not going to go into spoilers again, but you know what I'm talking about. There's one major one in particular, and it was okay to me. A lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was fine, and it kind of brought up something different that I liked, and it kind of raised the question about Dr. Loomis, and then perhaps, that there are other types of people who may be looking after Michael. So those were the things that I really liked about this film, and now let's talk about some of the things that I didn't like. And perhaps my biggest gripe for this film was the lack of creepy atmosphere. I did not see a concise or creepy atmosphere throughout this film, and that is one of the main reasons that I think the original holds up so well. John Carpenter's excellent cinematography and directing, making the shots hold for long periods of time. That happened about, 3 times in this movie, and the rest of it was too fast. The cuts were too quick. It didn't build up enough suspense for certain scenes. I felt it was lacking in a lot of scenes. There are a few that redeem it, but a lot of the scenes were lacking in that creepy suspense, and it didn't capture the essence of Halloween the holiday. It really just felt like another night other than jack-o'-lanterns being outside. They also didn't focus on the right people. I wanted to see Laurie. I wanted to see Jamie Lee Curtis going up against her boogeyman. And while we did get that, especially towards the end, most of this film follows a bunch of high schoolers going through the traditional horror tropes, and it lost me in a lot of scenes, and I didn't know why they were following just random high schoolers when we could have had a great story with Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode. The soundtrack, while some of the tracks are really cool, there are others that are kind of hit or miss. Some of them don't really stick to the classic soundtrack that made the original so popular. Of course, John Carpenter and his son Cody Carpenter made the songs, so it does really harken back to John Carpenter's original ideas, but I thought they were kind of a bit too modern and sometimes a little bit too unlike the original. And especially being called Halloween, this film being named after the original, it should have stayed a little bit more to the tone of the classic film. I also just thought, and this was another big thing for me, Michael was far too brutish. Without giving spoilers away, Michael Myers was so strong and overpowered in this film. He honestly, to me at least, felt more like Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th franchise. And that's not a bad thing. I don't mind the brutish killer thing that Jason has going on, but Michael was always the thin, creepy stalker type of killer. He wasn't this big, tough, brutish guy throwing people around. That just wasn't who Michael Myers was. And in this film, while he is intimidating, yes, it just doesn't feel like that traditional creepy Michael Myers that we got in the first few Halloween films. So as a whole, and again, I hope my opinion changes. And you know what? Perhaps it will. There's been some movies that I don't really care for at first, and then I really like them. I hope that's the case, and I want you to see this movie and not worry about my opinions, and just see it for what you see it as. But as it stands for me, I'm going to give Halloween 2018 a 3 out of 5 skulls. And if you saw my ranking video of the Halloween films and want to know where this one takes place, I would probably put it right after Halloween H2O, because this film definitely feels like Halloween H2O with its lack of atmosphere, but it does have some upbeat and fast-paced scenes that kind of redeem it. So with that being said, I'm going to say it fits snugly right in that section of my ranking video. So if you don't want spoilers, thank you for watching this review. I appreciate you clicking on this video, and for all of you who do want spoilers, let's jump into the spoiler talk. So there's a lot of things in this film that were quite interesting to me. First of all, you have the two kind of reporter people at the beginning who I thought were just kind of there to get the plot started, and then they were killed off rather fast by Michael, and in kind of a weird way, kind of homaging to Halloween H2O. Then you get the credits, and I was really excited to see what they would look like because I heard the pumpkin was going to be in it. It was kind of cool how it was like all old and then kind of reformed. I thought that was kind of neat, but the credits were really fast-paced, unlike the original where they were very foreboding, and it kind of got the tone kind of fast. Like I mentioned before, the shots were really quick, and they just cut too fast to elongate and add suspense on, John Carpenter was such a master of suspense, and this movie just didn't have enough of it for me. And then you get, I believe his name's James Courtney. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. The guy who plays Michael Myers. Again, I thought he was a really creepy Michael Myers. Very scary, very intimidating presence in the film. He was one of the great parts of this film. But he felt too much like Jason to me. There's that one scene where he stomps on a guy's head and it squishes on the pavement. He's throwing this guy against a wall. He is very brutish in this film. Very tough. He's ripping things out of the ground. And it felt way too much like Jason from Friday the 13th to me. It lacked that creepiness, that stalkerness that Michael Myers had in the first few Halloweens, especially the 78 original. And I don't know, it just bothered me. It honestly bothered me. Jamie Lee Curtis is in a lot of key scenes throughout the film. I love the ending where Michael looks out on the lawn and she isn't there anymore, just like the original. That was cool, movie. That was very cool. But to think that she waited 40 years and that was her plan, to trap him in the basement and then light her entire house on fire. Plus she had a bunch of guns that she couldn't have even used because they were in the basement, which was weird. And then we never really see Michael burning or anything, which is probably going to mean we're going to see a sequel soon because the producers want a sequel because of cha-ching, money, which I get, but it didn't really feel like a solid ending to this film. And if I had to say one thing about this movie, it felt a little bit too rushed. Maybe I was just so excited about it that it went really fast for me, but I don't know. Did that feel like that to you when you watched this film? Did it feel too rushed? Perhaps it's just me, maybe it was just me, but that's just kind of how I felt about it. Overall, I thought the kills were a little over the top, a little too gory, a little too brutish. The pacing was a little too fast. It did have a really interesting environment. It definitely felt more real, similar to the first one, where it just took place on a basic neighborhood street, which I did like, but it just kind of lacked some things that I wanted to see from a Halloween sequel. And one more thing before I go. There's that weird twist where the doctor, who's kind of like the new Sam Loomis, kills a cop in order to see Michael Myers and try to understand why he kills. I get a lot of people say that's weird, but it's kind of the antithesis of Loomis, whereas he just wanted to see Michael Myers killed. This guy wants to see him live and understand him. It's not the best twist, but it is interesting enough to keep me intrigued. This movie did keep me intrigued. It did stay fast-paced, but it just doesn't hold up to the creepy atmosphere as the classics. But of course, that's just my opinion. So let's hear yours in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and remember, as always, for all things Halloween, this is Haunt-Former.